Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastos, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's nice to be here, and I have a special guest today. It's me. I just thought I would spend a little time talking to you one-on-one. You know, I love doing this program because I have an opportunity to talk to so many different people from different walks of life. And they're specialists in their field, and I learn a lot. I find that, you know, being able to talk to someone and listen to them can make a big difference. Many of you who are familiar with my career, I've been in television in New York City for over 4 decades. And I've anchored at 3 major flagship stations in New York, ABC 7, CBS 2, and Fox 5. And I've been honored by that. And many times, you know, people will say, okay, tell us a little bit more about, you know, who you are and what you've done and why you do it. Well, I'll say it again. I have been honored and continue to be honored by the ability to be able to go on the air and talk to people like you right now and tell you exactly, you know, what's going on in my life and in this world. And I was fortunate to know early on that I wanted to be in broadcasting. I remember many times when I was a little kid, I was growing up back in New Hampshire, and I would sit underneath that kitchen table. And I was about 10 years old, and I would listen to the radio, and the announcer would speak, and I would pretend that I was the announcer, and then I would turn the radio down low, and then I would hear music, and I would turn it up. And that led to my building a little radio station in the basement, and the rest is history. I went on and got my first job when I was 16 years old in radio and continued broadcasting throughout my career in college, and here I am today. People say, you know, what have you learned? What is exactly that has come to you from over the years? Well, I can tell you that I've learned that I've seen the best and the worst of human behavior. I'm a trained sociologist. My degree is in sociology. And I studied that more than I really did journalism because I wanted to know how people think and how they feel. Because that's what the news is all about. It's all about human emotions and why people conduct themselves the way they do, good or bad. So I learned over the years that I could study human behavior in many ways as a journalist. And some of the stories that I've covered have been amazing. Probably, you know, the most heart-wrenching story, the most difficult story that I've had to cover was 9/11. Now, that was painful. It was very personal to all of us here in New York because it was happening in our backyard. And people that, you know, that we knew, people who were watching, knew the families, knew the lives that were lost and the suffering that was going on. I lost friends at 9/11. And covered that story was a painful thing to do for months, actually years, when you think about it, all the anniversaries, bringing back a lot of the memories. But covering the story from day one was just mind-boggling. I mean, could you believe it? Could I believe it? What was happening before our very eyes? Devastating story, and that has stayed with me forever. But, you know, there have been other stories that I've covered in New York, you know, some of the great World Series. That's been fantastic. Desert Storm Parade. I also remember traveling to London to cover the death of Princess Diana, and also John F. Kennedy Jr.'s tragic crash in Massachusetts. There are so many different stories that I've covered that have been sad and some that have been really exciting. But probably the most interesting stories that I cover are about people. And I remember talking to a woman who was 100 years old. I think she was from Brooklyn. And she was just so dynamic and so enthusiastic about life. I mean, she was talking about politics. She was talking about social issues. And I said, you know, this is what I like. I like to talk to people and learn more about how they feel, how they think, and what's made them who they are. And this woman was the epitome of what a Greek philosopher once wrote. And you have to listen to this. He said, I have a wish to die young, but as late in life as possible. Isn't that good? You're talking about having a youthful heart and a youthful spirit and not feeling like you've done everything. You've been there, you just don't have anything left. You have to have all kinds of good things in your mind, dreams and goals and desires to continue your life and to be able to make a contribution and to learn and to develop yourself. That is something that you have in your soul and in your heart, a youthful spirit, a youthful attitude. I read a lot of books. I brought one to the studio today, and this is called Where Will You Be 5 Years from Today? I love this book. It's a terrific book, and there's a guy named Dan Zadra who puts it together and comes up with all kinds of questions. I mean, if you open it up, you start to decide, what page you want to stay on and what paragraph you want to work on. Decide what's next in your life and strategize how to get it. I mean, that's a great chapter. Just figuring out who you are and what you want to do with your life. Choose your mission. Your life is worth a noble motive. Deciding what your goals are, who you want to be and why. What gifts have you been given? Is another one here that's called What Will You Do with Your Talents? What will you do with your talents? You ever think about that? These are questions that I like to ask myself, and I like to ask other people because you learn from them. And I think that my motivation today, after doing the news for so many years, is to be on the air and to present positive news you can use. If there's a problem, how many times did I go on the 11 o'clock news and I said, good evening, and then told people why it wasn't? Because it was all bad news, unfortunately, that I had to report. So now, I have an opportunity to come to you and say, okay, here's a story. Here's something that's going on in our world. It could be anything from, let's say, bullying. It's a problem. Decide, a little bit more about what we can do about it, what programs are out there that are helping kids. It could be anything. It could be retirement. It could be relationships. It could be marriage. It could be your career. I like to look at subjects and be able to find out what can we do to let you know what's being done to make whatever it is better. Thinking out loud with you, some of the people that I've interviewed, my goodness, I made a list one time. You won't believe this, but I sat down and I made a list. I said, okay, let me talk about the people that I've interviewed. Are you ready for this? I'm going to bore you a little bit. All right, here we go. These are people that I've interviewed. Kenny Rogers, Bruce Springsteen, Barry Manilow, Muhammad Ali, Alfred Hitchcock, Fidel Castro, Mikhail Gorbachev, Spike Lee, Jesse Jackson, Buzz Aldrin, George H.W. Bush, Lucille Ball, Ed Sullivan, my God, Mark Anthony, Jennifer Lopez, Brooke Shields, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Clive Davis, Chaz Palminteri, what a great guy. His movie, Bronx Tale was fantastic. Ted Williams, Yogi Berra, Betty Davis, Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather, unbelievable. Regis Philbin, great guy. Bernie Williams, Olympia Dukakis, Mark Goodson, Dan Quayle. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, I've interviewed all of these people, and sometimes I stop and I say, do I have stories about them? I do. Cat Stevens, what a great performer. His real name is Steve Georgiou, by the way. He's born in London, happens to be of Greek descent. What a great interview I had with him. Frank Gifford, Kathy Lee Gifford, Dan Rather, Douglas Edwards, one of the first news anchors in New York, and also Walter Cronkite, who happened to be one of my mentors. Walter was a genuine human being. Couldn't have been any better than him. I mean, they named him the most trusted man in America, and for a reason. The man had integrity. He had credibility. He cared about what he did. I remember talking to him, and he would say to me, Ernie, that voice that he had, Ernie, let me tell you something now. He was talking about the news business, and he said, we're watchdogs. We're not attack dogs, and we're not lap dogs, but we're watchdogs. We go out there, and we just look to see what's going on, and we bark and let people know what's going on and let them decide what action they want to take, informing people. And he believed in credibility, and he believed in sources and making sure that all of our information was factual and correct and not opinionated. I'm just curious if you want to hear one or two stories. Peter Allen, he was a great songwriter and a performer. And I remember talking to Peter one time. We were in a cab. We were going to a restaurant in New York. And he wrote so much, in his career. But he wrote the theme, from Arthur's Theme, the movie with Dudley Moore and Liza Minnelli. And he was telling me a story one time. He said, the theme, Arthur's Theme, he said, I had a difficult time coming up with certain lines. He said, and I was flying back from Los Angeles to New York, and I'm in an airplane, and we're circling the airport, Kennedy Airport, and, whatever the weather was, and there was some kind of backup. And he's circling around, and he's looking up at the sky, and he's looking in the plane, and he's stuck. He's writing this song, and he said, okay, if you get lost between the moon and New York City. You know that song? If you get lost between the moon and New York City. It's crazy, but it's true. The theme from Arthur's movie. And that's where it came from. He was just sitting on an airplane, and, the inspiration. When I hear stories like that, I love it, because it's like I learned something, and it's so real and so tangible. Here he was experiencing that. He wrote it, and he put it in the song. I love it. I'm bringing back some older names only because, I've done certainly other current interviews, but Alfred Hitchcock, who was always an amazing figure, he had a program, aside from his movies, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He had that profile, remember? Da-dun, 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 da-dun. Anyhow, I'm sitting there and I'm having lunch with Alfred Hitchcock and maybe 5 other journalists at kind of a private gathering. He was in town for some event. And I'm sitting here talking to him, and I said, Mr. Hitchcock, how do you come up with all of these amazing ideas? You have all these movies that you work on, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. It's a TV show every Sunday night. How do you come up with all of these things? And he said to me, ideas come to me at the most inopportune time. I said, really? He said, yes. He said, sometimes I get an idea, and it just comes to me suddenly. That's like genius. And I said, and what do you do? He said, I write it down on a piece of paper. Really? He said, yes. He said, and I collect all of these so that I can remember them, and then I can write a story about it. So I was really moved by that, and I was just sitting there quietly for a moment while we were having lunch. And he reached into his pocket. I can see him now. He reached into his pocket, and he slammed down on the desk. And there was a bunch of papers, little pieces of paper. And he said to me, the future. I said, what was in there? The birds, what movie was he working on? What series was he developing? And he had these things written down on a little piece of paper. Isn't that fabulous? Again, like I was talking about Peter Allen, tangible stuff. Being able to hear a story like that and see it and live it with the person who's making that story happen. I love it. I think these things are terrific. Let me just continue to talk a little bit more. I have always had an interest in children from the time I was young, because I think as a youngster, I was motivated and I had role models, and I thought that it was important to have people that inspired me. I had many teachers that did that to me, and I wanted to turn that around and to be able to give back to young kids. And over the years doing the news, I've had programs where I have focused on teenagers. I did a program called The Next Generation, where I would bring in a group of young people, and then I would bring in news leaders and personalities and celebrities, and they would interview the personality, and I would be part of it, and I would encourage them. And I loved doing that. And then I wrote a couple of books. The first one I did was Teens, Yesterday and Today, and it was all about the history of teenagers in America. Fascinating book. I went out and I interviewed so many people at different places. I went to nursing homes. I wanted to get various generations. And the book was released in 1983. And so I went out and talked to so many people and asked them their memories about going to school, about fashion, fad, and lifestyle of the American teenager. Learned a lot from that book, and still go out and speak to a lot of young people and discuss, what the future is like and what the past was like for a lot of young people. And I did another kid's book, Ernie and the Big News, The Adventures of a TV Reporter. And it's an inspiring book. It's like my story, a kid who starts at a little radio station in his basement and comes to New York and covers all the big stories. But, there are positive endings to the stories, and it isn't a tragedy. And by doing that, I go out and I talk to kids at schools throughout the New York area. We've had 400 or 500 children at one assembly at a time. And through a charity, St. Francis Food Pantries and Shelters of New York, We've donated over 20,000 books to young children in New York. But what I love about this is that when I talk to them, I tell them that this book is about becoming the best that you can be. Dream big. How can you make the world a better place? And I want them to choose a career that can reflect that. And when I tell them the story about how I was interested at a very early age by having my little radio station down in the basement, and it was my natural desire, and I followed that, I asked them what they want to do. And you'd be surprised how these little kids in elementary school just light up. They light up when you talk to them. And they start talking about something that they're interested in. Could be sports, could be painting. I remember one kid was telling me about being interested in fish. Had a wide collection of fish, like an aquarium. And I said, maybe you should think about a career that's related to that. It could be something that you're really interested in, like you could be an oceanographer, you could study something, you could be a professor, you could do something that brings you closer to your natural passion. And I love that. I love it when I see these kids just get so excited about what they're doing and encouraging them. Do you know how much we need that? You know how important it is for us to give our young people especially an opportunity to feel self-esteem. That's one of the greatest gifts you can give a child. As a parent, I can tell you that. Self-esteem. They have to feel good about themselves. They have to know that they have a future, that they have a talent, they have a gift. There's only one of them. No one has your fingerprints. Once they start to understand that and realize how unique they are, how special they are, they light up like a bulb. And I find that so rewarding. In my opinion, that's one of the greatest things. I'll leave you with this thought. One of the things people always ask about, if you're successful, and I've been fortunate to be successful in my career of broadcasting, and I say, don't strive for success. Strive for significance. Try to do something that will have some lasting value and purpose in your life. Success is good. I mean, you work hard at what you want to do to try to provide for yourself and your family and your loved ones and certainly be able to do good for other people. But beyond that material that we all need to survive, you need to look and see what you do with your life in terms of giving back, finding a way to help make the world a better place. And this is what I do with young people, and this is what I'm sharing with you today. It's kind of fun to do this. I got papers galore, things that I could talk to you about. And maybe we'll do it the next time. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, drop me a line and let me know, and then we'll continue these kind of personal one-on-one talks, okay? I hope you enjoyed it, because I did. I just kind of sat here and rambled on, but it was fun for me to do that. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy yourselves and stay positive, okay? Talk to you soon.